All right, so in this video, we're going to go over some ways that you can track momentum, right? So what are we doing when we're tracking momentum? What was this we discussed in the course is that we're trying to identify when shifts in the market are happening, right? And so not only that, but also when momentum is accelerating and moving stronger and stronger in the direction of the trend or away from the trend, and what we can do about that, right? So on this chart here, things look a little muddy because of all the trend lines, but I wanted to specifically just point out examples of what we're going to track, right? So in this screen here, the trend is up, the long-term trend is up, and so this may be the daily, or it's the daily chart, but it may be the trading time frame that we're looking at executing on, right? So when we're tracking momentum, again, as I mentioned, the trend line being an awesome indicator, if you want to call it that, I call it a tool, but it just allows us to see things simply and clearly, right? As compared to an indicator such as, the RSI or the MACD, which changes on a few different variables, and it just doesn't have the consistency. It doesn't have the consistency that a trend line does, right? And again, with the trend line connecting the reversion moves, it's built on market structure, right? So it's a simple tool. It's built on real price action that's happened, and for those things, that's why I like it, and I like to use it, right? Among other reasons. But so if we know that the long-term trend is up, right, and this area here has broken support levels to the downside, then what we're looking for is a break to the upside and to see if price continues, right? So that's going to be the trickier thing with larger pullbacks, reversals that break market structure but still continue with the trend. Those are always going to be trickier to trade as compared to a simple pullback or a simple flag like you see here, these small guys here as far as getting position. But what they typically do is it's typically a breeding ground for a larger part of the move, right? It sets us up. So when we talk about, not picking tops and bottoms, we talk about letting things get established, right? There's nothing wrong with here, letting the market break through the trend line, hit that previous, resistance area, and see how the market is going to play out, and then getting in the move for a longer, for hopefully what would end up being a larger move. But so let's go through the momentum process here. And so we see shifts, right? Downtrend to uptrend, right? Downtrend to uptrend. So if we're trying to participate in the up moves, and we're either trying to strategically limit our participation in the down moves, or we're trying to take advantage of that, or even potentially reverse depending on the size or the momentum of what's happened, and essentially try to move in and out of the market in a strategic way, right? Then tracking momentum becomes very important, especially kind of like up to the minute momentum, right? The immediate, as compared to like a longer trend line. These steeper trend lines are the ones that are going to be kind of what we're looking for to take advantage of. As far as taking profit, right? If we're going to be thinking about one thing, we'd be thinking about momentum, extreme momentum, reversing, good place to take profit. Long-term trend line, good place to reestablish position, or at least to make a move around, right? Whether it's adding back into a trade, getting into a trade, specifically the price action that happens around here can give us clues as to whether or not the trend is ready to resume, or if it needs a little more time, like it was here, right? It broke through, but ultimately the trend is still intact and still moved higher from here. So anyways, again, with the trend lines here, simplicity is key, right? It allows us to be consistent in our approach. So again, uptrend, downtrend, uptrend, sideways. Things aren't going to pan out and work out exactly as we would hope they would every time, right? If they did, then it makes things easy to become an automated system, and it's just not. It's not something that's very easy to do in the markets, because it takes a lot of subjectivity and, or I should say objectivity, not subjectivity, to be able to track and to watch these things happen. But again, this gives us something simple to watch, to identify when trend might be reversing, at least in the short term, and for the moves that go higher, right? We can obviously draw a bigger trend line here, and that's going to be more ideal for the longer term trend at hand. So these are just ideally taking advantage of and identifying and being aware of the smaller moves that are happening within that to help us be more strategic. Okay, so another way that we can follow trends that I mentioned was through the TPO charts, through the market profile. And again, just paying attention to where value is established, right? So that includes the value area and the point of control. Primarily the point of control is easiest to watch because, at least the way I have it set up, it's bright, right? So you see a stair-step pattern, right? It doesn't matter whether price moves lower intraday, it's still moving higher every day, right? And so that's about the same that we see here, right? When price is moving higher, right? We're getting that boop, 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 boop. If you picture that there's a point of control on each one of these, right? That's exactly what we're seeing. Okay, and then even as price reverses and value begins to move lower on a daily time frame, right? We can also watch this on, on the weekly, as we see how value gets established higher and higher, right? And then the last thing that I wanted to take a look at, or I guess we can just talk about this real quick, is just, again, you see how as the momentum shifts from higher to lower, you can see how the value area changes along with the point of control, and then where we close within those each one of those days as well, right? Kind of gives us an idea of the weakness and the thing that's happening. And then also we can do the same thing with our VWAP, right? So we haven't gone through back into VWAP in a significant way. We're going to do that soon in the next section. But something I wanted to point out too was, just like we have the closing VWAP, and I've discussed that that closing VWAP is similar in first and second standard deviation bands, or the first, the positive and minus, the one that, the +1 standard deviation and the -1 standard deviation. Essentially, through the day, they are your developing value, but by the time that they close on the day, they're essentially that established and value area, right? So this is going to be your value area, this being essentially your point of control for the day. And so we can see how that moves as well in regards to the trend as it stair steps higher as well, right? Because it should line up with those other profiles, and so it is a representation of value, and so as the trend moves, it will also move with those areas as well. Something I wanted to point out that I think is pretty cool is that during the trend, right? So when we talk about the market trending, right, we know that any intraday moves that happen are ultimately going to fail to, let's say, the long-term trend is to the upside. Any of those intraday moves that are to the downside are ultimately going to fail as price continues to move higher, right? We know that, trends aren't linear, they don't go straight up. So I thought it was worth pointing out here that it's like any of the trends that happen, especially the ones that break down below the value that's created on the day, ultimately fail to the upside. And so by drawing a simple trend line here, we're able to see that once the move is over, price immediately snaps back to the upside, right? Where it continues the trend, right? So that happens on any major move that moves to the downside, whether it's here, this one's significant, right? So if you're trading this intraday, you could say, well, this looks like, based on, even though the VWAP is staying way up here and value is established up here, which is higher, based on the significant move and the volume that happened essentially in the first third of the day, price ultimately failed to the downside. And so intraday, this is going to look like, okay, well, potentially the trend is reversing on this, right? Because now we've tested the previous value area and we've broken down below that. But ultimately, once the sellers eased up and they ran out of steam and the buyers took back control, they were able to easily take this back up into that previous value area. And then ultimately we were able to work ourselves up to the upside as it kind of digested this down move. Because when things like this happen, market participants are going to be skeptical of things at that point, right? This is a significant move to the downside. Okay, well, are we going to see more of that? And so that's why you'll get that kind of resistance here, right? So we have, not only is this resistance from the current day VWAP, but you also have from the previous day, where people are still a little gun shy, saying, okay, well, what's going to happen? Are we kind of stalling out here? Does it look like momentum's going to reverse until things break out back to the upside? And then again, value is established and price moves. But I thought it was interesting to note that, any significant move to the downside underneath the VWAP, when the trend is established and is persistent in its direction, ultimately fails. And so what's going to happen is going to be the same thing for a downtrend, right? As the VWAP closes lower and lower and lower in stair steps, any of those moves that get moving to the upside, where it's like some people are looking for that breakout and going, all right, yeah, the downtrend's over, ultimately is going to fail to the downside and continue moving lower in accordance with that VWAP. So anyways, again, hope you got some value out of this. I know that a lot of times a visual example can help a lot more than just a slide. So we're going to continue to do these videos to help kind of give more examples in the future.